I'm Krios, the king of the universe, the great king, the mighty king, the king of Babylon, the king of Sumer and Akkadian, the king of the 4 parishes. He asked if he had searched all of them in all the lands. He looked everywhere and chose the fairest king suitable for himself. He took her hand, mentioned her name. Krios is the king of Anshan. He proclaimed him the king of the whole world. He made all the people of Uti and Met kneel before him and shepherded with justice and mercy all the people of Babylon, which he won thanks to Cyrus Mardan lessons under the leadership of the great Krios. He built the first real empire in the world, stretching from Iran to Europe, Egypt and even India.
Located in the Apadana in Persepolis, that is, in the Baitokla Hall, it shows how much importance is attached to distinguishable and diversity.
I am Krios, the great king, the king of the universe, the mighty king, the king of Babylon, the king of Sumer and Akkadian, the king of the 4 parishes. These words, found on a cylinder tablet in the 19th century, were written to celebrate the conquest of Babylon in 539 BC. After Krios ascended the throne in 559 BC, a major breakthrough took place on Persian soil on the way to becoming the world's first true empire. Although other societies such as the Assyrians had previously ruled over the vast territory of Mesopotamia, none of them could dominate a geographical area as wide as the Persians, whose territory stretched from Europe to the Indus River. While expanding his empire, his principle of tolerance allowed the local peoples to preserve their languages, traditions and religions, while allowing the Persian culture to benefit from a truly global exchange. Krios' imperial identity, consisting of numerous religions and languages, is also a source of inspiration in the modern world. According to the Greek historian Xenophon, Krios overshadowed all the reigns before him. The ruins of Persepolis, the capital of the Persian Empire, founded the city in 518 BC of the first Darius and built a huge palace, the ruins of which can still be seen today. When the second Krios wore the crown of sovereignty in 559 BC, the Perso people living in the south of present-day Iran were no more than a kind of tribal chieftain. Cyrus, the last ruler of his dynasty, had inherited a state subordinate to the Median Empire in the north, which was then in a much stronger position. In 612 BC, the Medes captured the Assyrian capital Nineveh, which would bring them control of the territory stretching throughout Mesopotamia. The Mad King, who was at the height of his power, then wanted to marry the girl Mandarin to the first king of Persia in the 580s BC. Their son born from this marriage, the second Cyrus, will not only bring the Medes to their knees. He would also have founded the world's first real empire. The famous story told by the historian Herodotus about the birth of Krios was inspired by Greek texts, just like the king tried to reverse the prophecy that he would be deposed by his son by killing his son. According to the story, the Met king Asigaze saw his daughter Tangerine in a dream one day. He made the girl so much gold that he flooded the entire Asian continent. The king, who was very impressed by this strange dream, consulted his soothsayers, and the soothsayers interpreted the dream as an omen that his grandson, who will be from his daughter, will conquer the land of Met. Wanting to reverse this omen, Astyages decided to marry her daughter to the Persian king, so that the child born to her would not be able to seize the throne of Med. In fact, everyone later saw in a dream that the wine poured from the girl's womb spread all over Asia. The king, who became very restless, did not separate his daughter from supervision. The legend continued after the birth of Krios. His commander Agapu ordered him to kill the baby. But instead of fulfilling the order personally, Harkapus gave the baby to a shepherd to leave somewhere in the highlands, and the shepherd brought the child home so that he could relieve the pain of his wife, who had just given stillbirth. She adopted the baby, leaving her own stillborn children on the mountain. The pharmacy is named after the Persian hero Rustam and the rock tomb Nakshi Rustam, which is located near Permisi and Persepolis. The tomb of Darius I is located here along with the later Persian kings. It is believed that the tombs were looted by the troops of Alexander the Great 200 years after the foundation of the Persian Empire. It is obvious that Herodot's story has many rally elements in it. But like most legends, there is a pinch of truth in this story. Krios really conquered the land of Met in 550. Before the guarantee, his powerful grandfather deposed him from the throne. Asia's commander, whose name is Harpagus just like in the story, betrayed the king and went to the side of Krios. Thus, it became even easier for the Persian king to capture the capital of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ecuador. According to the Herodotus, from that moment on, the Persians and the Medes came together under the leadership of the second Krios, who would soon be called the Great Krios. Having gained experience with his victory in October Patton, Krios turned his attention to Lydia this time. Lydia, which was extremely attractive for an ambitious king, was a well-known trading center. The Lydians were also the inventor of the coin system that we still use today. In 547 BC, the king of Lydia organized raids on his territory. Thus, he gave Krios an excellent reason for attacking. According to the Babylonian chronicles, Krios crossed the Tigris River and then walked to the Lydian capital along the royal road that would be built by the first Darius to connect Sardes with key cities throughout the Persian Empire. Krios crossed the Sihan River to conquer the lands that remain within the borders of Afghanistan today. In the 1860s, near the river, what you see on the screen right now, it took place in Petia, located in Yozgat. After the conflict, he withdrew his troops to the barracks and called on his allies, the Spartans, Egyptians and Babylonians, to help. On the other hand, Krios took a risk and made a sudden attack on him. The Persians, under the leadership of Commander Harpagus, stepped into a magnificent victory and annexed Sardes and its treasurers to the Persian Empire, and soon after the victory, they also gained control over the cities of Ion, located on the western side of Anatolia. In the following years, Krios devoted himself to expanding the eastern border of the empire. To dominate this land meant to dominate the caravan routes. Krios expanded his territory with his expeditions with this intention to Marakanda, which is located within the borders of Afghanistan today, and from there to Samarkand. When his works in the east were successfully completed, Krios set his eyes on the biggest prize this time. He erected it in Babylon, the capital of Mesopotamia. At that time, the internal policy in Babylon could not have been more favorable for the Persian attack. The Babylonian king Nabonidus had lost the trust of the city's patron god Mardi Grahips. because the priests believed that the king was abusing the religious rights of the city. Krios' concern and tolerance for the religious diversity in the vast lands he conquered was the key point of the stability of his empire. This policy had further consolidated his power. Krios searched all those lands in his cylinder, asked him all. He looked everywhere and chose the fairest king suitable for himself. He took her hand, mentioned her name. Krios is the king of Anshan. He proclaimed him the king of the whole world. He made all the people of Guti and Met kneel before him and shepherded all the Babylonian people with justice and mercy, which he earned thanks to Cyrus Mardon. Their expressions are included. The cylinder says that the Babylonians accepted Krios as a savior in the autumn of 539 BC. There is a statement written in Babylonian cuneiform on the Krios cylinder, which is only 23 inches long, made of clay. The cylinder, dated to the 6th century BC, was discovered in Babylon in 1879. It was not only the Marduk priests who celebrated the conquest of Babylon by Krios. Since the capture of Jerusalem by the second Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC, many Jews had been living as captives in Babylon.
It formed the basis of the stories in the book of Daniel.
The emperor's decision to send the Jews back to Jerusalem was another indication of Krios' embrace of multiculturalism in the book of Isaiah in the Tanakh. About Krios, the Lord held the person he anointed by his right hand and called Koresh. He writes that he will make the international bow down before him, disarm kings, open doors that will never be closed again. Krios had reached the peak of his power. As it was written on the Krios cylinder, he seemed to have become the king of the world. After this victory, many kings throughout Asia became worthy to swear allegiance to this powerful leader, the greatest empire the world has ever seen. In his cuneiform cylinder, he mentions that rulers from the Upper Sea, that is, the Mediterranean Sea, and the Lower Sea, that is, the Persian Gulf, came to tax Krios, Babylon, knelt down in front of him and kissed his feet.
The policy of tolerance also required the extraordinary victories of Krios to create an administration worthy of his empire. Inspired by the multifaceted model of the new Babylonian Empire, Cyrus selected and trained his best commanders from the Medes, while creating a wide network in public administration and taxation. After the capture of the Lydian and Ionian cities, the Persian administration was divided into provinces. Later, Babylon and other conquered territories were divided into units administered by lines. This system, called satraphic, was reorganized by Darius I in the following periods. Cyrus did not intend to impose the Persian religion, language or culture on his new subjects. His educational style was based on respect for the peoples living in the lands he dominated and tolerance for the wide variety of traditions and religious beliefs that these peoples had. This made him quite different from the earlier empire builders, in which displaced people, such as the captive Jews in Babylon, were allowed to return to their homeland. Local rulers were also allowed to preserve their properties, provided that they respected the supreme king and paid taxes, pax Persiana. As glorious as the rise of the Persian Empire was, its collapse was a terrible destruction. Cyrus, in 530 BC, approaching his 60s, organized an expedition to the northeastern border of his empire. According to Herodotus, the emperor believed that where he laid his hand, no one had a chance to escape. Were these words of Herodotus implying a power poisoning? He was killed in a battle with the Masagids, a nomadic people neighboring the Persians. According to the Greek historian, Queen Tomris lost her son in the war, whereupon she cut off the emperor's head and plunged it into a bucket full of blood. This incident is depicted in this painting by the Flemish painter Peter Paul Robin, which you see on the screen now. Queen Tomris dipped Krios's head into a bucket full of blood. The terrible end of Krios did not disrupt either his glamorous legacy or the expansion of his empire, which had already reached enormous proportions. The second Ses, who ascended the throne immediately after, conquered Egypt and founded the 27th dynasty. Although Cambyses' plans to advance further and take Ethiopia and Carthage in the west came to naught, his successor Darius, the son of a provincial governor, proved his courage by suppressing numerous uprisings, first conquered the valley in the east and crossed the Danube in the west, bringing the Persian Empire to its widest borders. But his greatest legacy was his administrative genius. Throughout the vast lands he owns, weight and money are one. The system he created to standardize became a guide for future empires. Continuing the religious policy established by Krios, Darius allowed many faiths, including those of the Jews and Egyptians, to continue to exist on his territory. Darius's plans for westward expansion had fallen through with the Battle of Marathon in 490 BC. His son Seras returned 10 years later to complete what his father had left unfinished, and his great defeat at the Battle of the Salamis Sea led to the rise of Athens to a new era in world history. So this is the legendary Krios or Krios we are talking about. Who was it? What had he done? In short, let's take a look together. Krios passed through history as the most benevolent ruler of all time, who allowed people in the lands he conquered to live and worship according to their hearts. The engraving of the great Cyrus. Cyrus was born as a member of the royal family in the Persian Emperor Cyrus the Great. Like many other ancient monarchs whose conquered lands were offered a tolerance and mercy that was unique for that period. Upon the death of his father, the first Kombi voice, Achaemene took over the management of Tanadan and Atadan Kal turned this kingdom into a huge empire. The source of his victories was not only the conquests he made, but also the tolerance and compassion he showed to those he defeated with similar strength. Krios, a brilliant military strategist, defeated the Met King, who united all the Iranian tribes at that time, and his skill in fighting on horseback gave great mobility to his army. By capturing Lydia, Krios had added the incredible wealth here to his treasury, and after conquering the lands surrounding Mesopotamia, he also put Babylon under siege. The Bagbuls, dissatisfied with this imposed drudgery and unable to see the help they expected from the city's patron god Marduk, acted against their king because they saw no reason to resist Krios, who was known to forgive and protect him, and opened the gates of the city in 539 BC, according to an inscription praising the victory of Krios. The Persians, who came cheerfully and enthusiastically with peace. A merciful man. The benevolent prayer of the trio was manifesting itself in many ways. The Medes, who had previously had a lot of power in the region, had brought them to various state offices instead of slaughtering them, and had adopted the dressing and adornment habits of the Elans. Throughout the lands he conquered, he was sending back images of gods captured in battle and storing them in Babylon. Even Marduk, the patron god of the city, was worshipped by everyone in Babylon, while Marduk, the patron god of Babylon, was fighting the sea goddess Theum, who represented the female element created by the world. The most well-known act of Krios' mercy was to release the Jewish artifacts that the second Nebuchadnezzar had exiled to Babylon. Krios had allowed these Jews to return to their promised land. As for the Jews, I have praised this Persian emperor in a manuscript as a savior whom God has made superior to other kingdoms so that he could enable them to rebuild their land back to Jerusalem. A legacy of goodness. Krios the Great lost his life in 529 BC during an expedition against stubborn nomadic tribes around the Caspian Sea. Despite the relentless wars they waged against the Persian heirs, the fact that the Greeks respected him greatly even years later was an indication of Krios' great personality, so much so that more than 150 years after Krios' death, the Greek writer Xenophon remembered this great voluntary ruler with respect in his work Kyriopedia, honored Xenophon's subjects, protected them as if they were his own children. In return, they respected Krios like a father. His words in the form showed this mutual love. These words were an inspiration for Thomas Jefferson, who held at least one October copy of Kuriopedia, one of the founding fathers of America. The benevolent legacy left by Krios can also be found in modern times at the United Nations headquarters in New York. A replica of the Krios cylinder is on display in this building. This cylinder, written in Babylonian cuneiform during the periods when Krios conquered the city and unearthed in the ruins of the city by British archaeologists in 1879, mercifully records his numerous actions in chronological order. It is mentioned that the cylinder, which is considered the first declaration of human rights and is a clear indication of the pluralistic and tolerant power of Krios, allows the peoples in the lands he created to live their own traditions. Such a practice was quite unusual at a time when monarchs owned not only the lands with their expeditions, but also those who lived on them, as you can see, dear friends. What happened thousands of years ago in front of your eyes? So what happened after the Persian Empire collapsed? Has it risen again? Here is our current title. The Rebirth of the Persian Empire. The Sassanids. The Sassanid dynasty, with the inspiration they received from the powerful ancestors, took the lands stretching from Turkey to Pakistan under their sovereignty and restored Iran to its former bright days. This image you see shows a silver plate with a deer hunting scene of the 5th century Hassan ruler Behram V, and it is currently in the Metropolitan Museum in New York. In 331 BC, Alexander the Great invaded Iran, and he put an end to the Achaemenid Empire founded by Krios the Great. The land of Iran remained under the rule of other empires for 500 years, until a new Persian dynasty took over. Proud of their roots, these new kings, the Sassanids, the conquerors who spread fear with the power they took from their past, revived the glory of their ancestors as great builders and artisans. The Sassanids held the west of Asia more than 400 years later. Expand the borders of the Roman and Byzantine empires in the west by conquering the territories of the Kushan Empire in the east to strengthen their ties with the past, relieving the achievements of their rulers in the traditional cemetery of the Achaemenid kings, Nakshi-Rustam. They honored them. Zoroastrianism became the state religion and the administration was centralized. The Sasani kings ruled over people of many cultures and ethnic backgrounds. The Silk Road passes directly through its territory. It brought not only wealth, but also a large number of merchants from Central Asia, India, the Arabian Peninsula, Egypt, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Caucasus, Greece and Rome. Although the influence of these people contributed to the cultural and financial expansion of the Sassanids, it made it difficult to govern during the reign of the first Khosrow in the 6th century. The Sassanid military and cultural power reached its peak. Khosrow had ascended the throne in 531. Khosrow has implemented new administrative reforms in order to ensure that he can quickly respond to any external attack, no rebellion. The country was divided into 4 regions and each was assigned its own military administrator. Although Zoroastrianism continued to be the state religion, many different faiths, including Judaism, continued to exist on Sassanid lands. The Babylonian Talmud, one of the most important texts of Rabbinic Judaism, was written under the Sasanian rule. Initially, it allowed religious diversity, but state pressure was also quite present. The founder of the belief in Marnialism, which includes both Christian and Zoroastrian influences, was the 3rd century religious leader Mani. However, around 274 Zoroastrian priests had been successful in their propaganda for his execution. The military strengthening of Byzantium and the murder of the second Yusuf in 628 marked the beginning of a period of decline. The Arab power was growing in the south, and its leaders saw how weak a position the Sassanids had fallen into. They first attacked the Persian cities in 633, and 3 years later captured Ctesiphon. The Iraq forces killed the last Sassanid king in the 3rd Yazd, 651. Islam has become a dominant religion. However, the surviving Persian refugees carried the Zoroastrian faith east to India. Those who destroyed the Sassanid Empire became their heirs. The newly arrived Arab Kundi Shapur and other centers excitedly protected the great sources of knowledge and ensured its spread. The fire of science lit by the Sasani kings would later reach Europe and cause societies to change. You can subscribe to my channel and like the video for such videos to come.